For over 1,000 years, the Galactic Institute of Advanced Mathematics stood as a monument to intellectual achievement, its crystalline spires reaching toward the twin stars of Academia Prime. This was where the galaxy's most brilliant minds came to solve problems that defied all comprehension, and none was more infamous, more terrifying, than the Kardashev convergence. This was an equation that wasn't just a math problem. It was a doomsday clock, predicting the exact point when a multidimensional civilization would collapse under its own complexity. Thousands of the galaxy's finest had tried to solve it. For a millennium, they had all failed. Professor Thanarix, a 700-year-old Severian whose brain had been neurally enhanced 12 times, stood before his advanced theoretical physics class. His presence carried the weight of centuries of unsolved mysteries. Behind him, holographic symbols twisted and danced in impossible geometrista. Kardashev, convergence in all its terrifying glory. For 1,043 years, Thanarix's voice echoed through his translation matrix. This equation has remained unsolved. It represents the theoretical limit of technological advancement before a civilization simply collapses under its own weight. Many believe it cannot be solved. Some even say it was never meant to be. The lecture hall was filled with the best and brightest, Severians with their enhanced minds, Quelix with their built-in quantum probability processors, and Nethern with their hive computational networks. And among them, there was one human. Her name was Dr. Alexis Kane. The others just called her the Death Worlder. For 3 months, she had been completely silent, just furiously scribbling notes in an actual paper notebook. It was a primitive habit, an artifact from a bygone era that made the other students deeply uncomfortable. Humans were the newcomers to the galactic community, and their admission had been controversial, to say the least. A species that still waged war on itself. A species that aged and died within a single century. A species that computed with squishy, organic brains. Unenhanced by technology, what could they possibly contribute to galactic knowledge? Then, the unthinkable happened. Alexis raised her hand. The entire lecture hall fell into a stunned silence. You could hear a pin drop. Professor Thanarix's 3 eyes swiveled toward her, his irritation barely concealed. Yes, Dr. Kane, I think I see the problem, she said, her voice quiet but firm. A ripple of amusement, of disbelief, spread through the class. A Quelix student's probability processor actually flickered in a way that could only be described as laughter. The problem, Thanarix said. His patience stretched thin. Is that the equation is unsolvable? No, Alexis replied, standing up and walking toward the holographic display, her primitive notebook clutched in her hand. The problem is that you're all thinking about it wrong. You're treating complexity as a vertical limit, a ceiling that civilizations hit and then just collapse through. But complexity doesn't work that way. She gestured at the spiraling, chaotic symbols of the equation. On Earth, we have something called the Red Queen hypothesis. It comes from our evolutionary biology. The idea is that species don't evolve to reach some perfect, final state. They evolve constantly in response to other evolving species. It's an arms race with no finish line. Complexity doesn't just accumulate until it breaks everything. It redistributes. Professor Thanarix's centuries of certainty began to waver. He had never considered such a concept. What are you suggesting, Dr. Kane? Alexis's fingers moved through the holographic interface, rearranging ancient symbols with a startling, almost primal confidence. The Kardashev convergence assumes that civilizations are closed systems, developing in a vacuum, but they're not. They interact, they compete, they cooperate, they wage wars and form alliances. The equation doesn't need to be solved, it needs to be It's not a static limit problem, it's a dynamic network problem. Her hands flew faster now, a blur of motion. She added new variables, removed long-held constants, and introduced elements that looked suspiciously like chaos theory into the sacred, ancient equation. The other students watched in growing unease, then outright horror. This wasn't how mathematics was done. This was reckless. It was intuitive. It was almost violent in its complete disregard for established methodology. It felt human. And then it happened. The equation balanced. The entire holographic display pulsed once, then twice, and suddenly rearranged itself into a breathtakingly elegant, breathing solution. It wasn't a static number, not a final answer. It was a dynamic model that shifted and adapted in real time. It showed, with perfect clarity, how civilizations could theoretically navigate infinite complexity through constant interaction and adaptation, rather than through isolated advancement toward some imaginary finish line. The silence in the lecture hall was absolute, a vacuum of sound and thought. Professor Thanarix stared at the display for a full 30 seconds, his neural enhancements processing the implications at a speed that would literally liquefy a human brain. When he finally spoke, his voice carried an emotion that was almost never heard from the advanced species of the galaxy. Pure, unadulterated fear. This changes everything, he whispered. If civilizations are not bound by the convergence limit, if complexity can be managed through dynamic interaction rather than internal optimization. He turned, fixing all three of his eyes on Alexis. Do you understand what you've just done? I solved your equation, Alexis offered, a little uncertainly. No. Thanarix's translator struggled to keep up with the raw emotion in his voice. You've just proven that the entire galactic policy of isolated development of allowing civilizations to mature in careful, controlled, sterile environments is fundamentally wrong. You've shown that competition, conflict, and chaos are not bugs in civilization development. They're features. From the back of the room, another professor, another named collective who observes, spoke up, its hive mind processing the new reality. The humans evolved in constant conflict, tribal warfare, nation-states, ideological struggles. They never had the luxury of peaceful, isolated development that we all enjoyed. Exactly, said a third professor, her horror plain to see. They are naturally adapted to navigate complexity because they've never known anything else. They do untit the convergence limit because they've been running the Red Queen-ass race since they first discovered fire. Alexis looked around at the terrified faces of the galaxy's greatest minds, the beings who had considered her species primitive just moments ago. Is that a bad thing? See. Ask it. Professor Thanarix closed all three of his eyes, as if to process a truth too blinding to see. It means, Dr. Kane, that for millennia, we've been carefully avoiding the very selective pressures that might have actually made us stronger. While we pursued a fragile, isolated perfection, your species pursued survival through chaos. He looked at her again, and for the first time, she saw an expression she recognized from her own world. It was respect, mingled with a profound and deep unease. Class dismissed, he said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. I need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. As the students filed out in a daze, their entire understanding of the universe shattered, Alexis calmly gathered her primitive paper notebook. She was completely unaware that she had just rewritten the future of galactic civilization. Behind her, the greatest professors in the galaxy huddled together, their enhanced minds racing, trying to comprehend the implications of what this death world or this survivor of Earth's brutal, chaotic, evolutionary gauntlet had just taught them about the very nature of survival itself. The Kadashev convergence was finally solved, and because of one human and her simple notebook, the galaxy would never, ever be the same. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from across the cosmos. See you next time.